Welcome back to CrimePod Castle, and welcome to, well, this is episode 22 of our Twisted Love series, and this one's a case from India. It sent shockwaves through the whole nation. The Shabnam and Saleem case. It's well, I'd say it's a story where love takes this dark and really deadly turn.
Yeah.
And we're gonna unpack each twist and turn together, of course.
Right.
What strikes you about this case?
I think what gets me is how deeply cultural norms and personal desires clash.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to look at how these clashes played out in a small town in India and how they led to to an unimaginable tragedy, really.
Right. So let's start in Amroha.
Okay.
It's in Uttar Pradesh. So picture like a seemingly ordinary town, where societal expectations, they hold immense sway. And then we have Shabnam Ali,
Right.
24-year-old school teacher.
Okay.
From a pretty well-off family. Educated,
Mm-hmm.
charismatic, by all accounts, well-respected in her community.
Yeah.
This is where the contrast gets really interesting, I think. So Shabnam falls head over heels in love with Saleem Malik.
Yeah.
He's a 26-year-old laborer, and he's from a much humbler background.
Yeah.
So, I mean, imagine all that societal friction,
Right.
all the whispers, the disapproval from all those people who believe that love should, stay strictly within certain social boundaries.
Yeah. I mean, you got to remember, their families, especially Shabnam's, they were far from thrilled
Of course, yeah.
about the relationship. And you're in a society where social standing, I mean, it's paramount.
Yeah.
Right? So their love was just a direct challenge to the established order. I mean, think about it. Like, in India, particularly back then, caste and class, I mean, they weren't just like social constructs. They were inescapable realities.
Yeah.
Marrying outside your group, your designated group, it was almost like social suicide. It's tough. It really makes you think. What would you do if you found yourself in love with someone who could bring, that kind of shame upon your whole family?
Right. Well, Shabnam's father, Shaukat Ali, he was furious.
Yeah, it's understandable.
He just saw Saleem as completely unsuitable for his daughter.
Of course.
And absolutely forbade them from even seeing each other.
Wow.
And it wasn't just disapproval. No, there were threats of pretty serious consequences if they disobeyed.
Yeah, that must been intense. So that sense of being trapped, of having your choices dictated, by these forces beyond your control, that's key here to understanding the desperation that Shabnam and Saleem, they must felt.
Right. So their love story, which was once a source of happiness, it starts to morph into something tinged with fear and resentment. And their families, who you would think would be their pillars of support, right?
Yeah.
They become obstacles, barriers to their happiness.
And that raises a big question for me. How does love, which is supposed to be this positive emotion, how does it get so twisted? How can it drive people to, even consider unthinkable acts?
Right. Well, on the night of April 14th, 2008, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Driven to a point of no return, Shabnam and Saleem, they came up with this horrific plan to eliminate Shabnam's entire family.
The details are just chilling.
Yeah.
I mean, the premeditation, it's truly disturbing. So under the cover of darkness, Shabnam sedated her entire family, her parents, her two brothers, her sister-in-law, a cousin, and even her 10-month-old nephew.
Wow.
Everyone was drugged, completely defenseless.
So imagine being a neighbor.
Yeah.
And you wake up to this news that this seemingly perfect family had been brutally murdered in their own home.
The shock, the horror, it must have been just palpable.
Right. So Saleem, he's armed with an axe, enters the house while the whole family is unconscious. And what follows is a scene of, just unimaginable horror.
Yeah.
With Shabnam holding down her own family members, Saleem attacks them one by one.
Yeah.
Just brutally ending their lives. I mean, the brutality of the crime, it sent absolute shockwaves through the entire community. Newspapers were just filled with headlines about the Amroha massacre, and people were they were left trying to comprehend how a love story could end in such bloodshed.
And here's where the investigation, it takes a real unexpected turn.
Okay.
Initially, Shabnam played the role of the grieving survivor perfectly.
Oh, wow.
Claimed that unknown intruders had attacked her family. She wept. She appeared distraught. I mean, a lot of people, they sympathized with her, saw her as the victim.
Right.
But the police, they weren't convinced. They started to notice inconsistencies in her story. There were no signs of forced entry.
Right.
And the forensic evidence, well, it revealed traces of sedatives in the victim system. So it suggested something a lot more sinister was going on. This is where I think the forensic evidence, it becomes really crucial. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
It starts to contradict Shabnam's narrative.
Yeah.
And the police, they start to suspect an inside job.
Okay.
Right. So as they dug deeper, they uncovered Shabnam's, secret relationship with Saleem.
Right, right.
Suddenly there's a motive, and the focus shifts to the couple. So Saleem is arrested, and under, pretty intense questioning, he confesses to the murders. His confession wasn't just an admission of guilt.
Oh, wow.
It was a bombshell. He implicated Shabnam as the mastermind behind the whole horrific plan. So he claimed it was Shabnam who convinced him to eliminate her family.
Wow.
That it was her plan, her manipulation that led him down this path of just utter destruction. And this confession, well, it became a huge turning point in the investigation.
Right.
It shattered the image of Shabnam as a victim.
Right. And the prosecution, they immediately seized on this.
Of course.
And they built a really strong case against both Shabnam and Saleem. They presented Shabnam as this cold and calculating individual.
Yeah.
Willing to do anything to be with her lover.
The trial that followed, it was one of the most sensational in India's history.
I can imagine.
Oh, yeah. Picture the courtroom. Packed with journalists, the public just eager to hear every detail of this twisted love story gone wrong. So the prosecution, they meticulously presented their evidence. Saleem's detailed confession, the forensic findings, linking the sedatives to the victims, and witness testimonies that just painted this picture of a strained relationship between Shabnam and her family.
Right.
So the defense, on the other hand, they tried to portray Shabnam as a victim of manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
They argued she was, deeply in love with Saleem and fell under his spell, becoming a pawn in his deadly game.
Wow.
Classic battle of narratives.
Yeah.
Who would the jury believe?
Right.
And then, in 2010, the verdict came down.
Okay.
Both Shabnam and Saleem, they were found guilty of murder and sentenced to death. The court declared their crime one of the rarest of rare cases, justifying the ultimate punishment.
This verdict, it was a defining moment in India's legal history. Shabnam, she became the first woman in independent India to be sentenced to death.
And that ignited a fierce debate across the country. People grappled with the death penalty's morality, especially when it came to a woman.
Right.
Was it just? Was it necessary?
Yeah.
The case, it shone this really harsh light on honor killings, and the control families try to exert over their children's lives.
That's a tough one.
Welcome back to CrimePod Castle. As we plunge deeper into this Shabnam and Saleem case, I think it's really crucial to shift our focus.
Yeah.
Away from the horrifying events themselves, and look more at the intricate psychological factors that drove them.
Because this wasn't just a case of, quote, love gone wrong. We've got layers upon layers of complexity here.
Absolutely.
We're talking about a young woman seemingly destined for success, good education, supportive family, promising future. And yet she chose this path that led to unimaginable darkness.
Yeah, I think that's what makes this case so compelling and unsettling. We have to try to understand what drove Shabnam to make these choices. Was it just Saleem's manipulative influence, or were there like deeper psychological forces at play?
Right. Well, one theory that we see a lot in similar cases is folie à deux.
Right.
Which means madness shared by two.
Right.
It's a rare psychiatric syndrome where one person's delusional beliefs are transmitted to another.
It's definitely a possibility here. Picture Saleem, desperate to be with Shabnam, harboring all this resentment towards her family.
Right.
It's possible he planted these seeds of delusion in her mind, pulling her into his distorted reality.
Right. So they sort of fed off of each other's negativity, anger, reinforcing this warped worldview where violence was the only answer.
Exactly. And then when you add in the immense social pressure they faced, the fear of being ostracized, it creates this perfect storm for a shared delusion to take root and just flourish.
Right. But we can't forget about Shabnam's family either. While their resistance to the relationship was clearly a major factor here, I think we need to be careful about just labeling them as villains in this story.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, their concerns, they might have come from a place of genuine care for Shabnam, right? A desire to protect her from what they saw as an unsuitable match. And we can't ignore the fact that cultural norms and societal expectations, I mean, they played a huge role in shaping their perspective.
Yeah, that's true. But at the same time, their strictness, their lack of flexibility, it created this environment where Shabnam felt suffocated
Yeah.
and desperate. It makes you wonder, had they chosen, like open communication, a willingness to understand her feelings, could this whole tragedy, could it have been averted?
I mean, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? This case, it really underscores like the vital importance of open dialogue within families.
Right.
Especially when it comes to sensitive topics like love and marriage. I mean, attempts to control or suppress someone's emotions, it can backfire so easily, and it leads to resentment and rebellion.
And in this case, it led to, well, to unspeakable tragedy. These murders, they didn't just shatter a family. They sent shockwaves through the entire community.
Absolutely.
They forced people to confront the potential for darkness within their own homes.
It's a chilling thought, and another fascinating aspect, I think, is the media's portrayal of Shabnam. She was often painted as this cold-hearted manipulator, this femme fatale,
right,
orchestrating these murders just to fulfill her own desires.
Well, I mean, the media loves a sensational story.
Of course they do.
And they latch on to the most shocking aspects,
right,
of a personality. But it's important to remember that Shabnam, she was a complex individual.
Absolutely.
With her own hopes and fears, and vulnerabilities.
We can't condone her actions. I mean, of course not. But we need to understand the psychological and societal pressures, the things that might have contributed to her decisions. I mean, even the most horrific crimes often arise from this tangled web of internal and external factors.
So as we grapple with those complexities, we're left with these haunting questions. Could this have been prevented? Were there missed opportunities for intervention, support, understanding?
And those questions, they linger long after the final verdict. We may never have definitive answers.
Right.
But the Shabnam and Saleem story, it offers these crucial lessons. We need to foster open communication within families, challenge these harmful societal norms, and recognize the warning signs, of emotional distress, manipulation.
Right. It's this stark reminder that love, while it can be a source of joy and connection, can also be this powerful force for destruction. And it underscores the need for open communication, the courage to challenge norms, the role of a just legal system.
It really does.
Welcome back to CrimePod Castle.
Yeah.
For the final part of, our deep dive into the Shabnam and Saleem case, we've kind of unraveled the threads of their love story, the brutality of the murders, and those complex psychological forces that were, kind of swirling around.
Right.
But the story, it doesn't end there.
It doesn't. Yeah.
We have to look at the legal aftermath, the societal impact, and the questions this case continues to raise even today.
Yeah. I think what really sets this case apart is the sentence that was handed down.
Right.
Both Shabnam and Saleem, they received the death penalty.
Right.
And that sparked a huge amount of controversy across India.
And it's not just any death sentence. Right. I mean, Shabnam's case, it's really significant. She became the first woman in independent India to be condemned to capital punishment. Right. And this challenged so many deeply entrenched societal norms.
Right.
And it really ignited a debate.
It did.
About justice, gender, the very nature of punishment.
So on one side, you had those who firmly believed in the death penalty. I mean, they thought it was the only fitting retribution for such a horrific crime.
Right.
Regardless of, the perpetrator's gender.
Right.
They argued that Shabnam was the mastermind, the driving force behind these murders, and she deserved the ultimate consequence.
And then there was the other side.
Right.
Right, this side that argued for rehabilitation, for the possibility of redemption, even in the face of such darkness.
Yeah.
They believed life imprisonment would be more humane, allowing her to potentially atone for her actions.
Right.
And maybe even contribute something positive to society.
And, I mean, this debate got even more complex when you factor in gender.
Yeah.
Right.
A lot of people, they argued that Shabnam's death sentence reflected, these deep-seated patriarchal attitudes, within the justice system.
Yeah.
And, I mean, statistics do show that women are far less likely to to receive the death penalty than men, even for comparable crimes.
It's almost like there's this underlying belief that women are, I don't know, inherently less capable of violence.
Right.
Or maybe more deserving of leniency. But I mean, the Shabnam and Saleem case, it shattered that perception.
It did.
Right. Forced society to acknowledge that women are just as capable of committing these horrific acts.
And it also, it thrust the whole issue of honor killings into the spotlight.
Right.
While it wasn't officially categorized as one, the motive of, controlling a woman's choices, punishing her for defying those, family expectations, it resonated.
Really deeply with those fighting against this deeply ingrained social problem. It's this chilling reminder that even now, even in the 21st century, in so many parts of the world, women still face, intense pressure to conform.
Right.
Often at the expense of their own happiness, their own freedom.
Right.
And defying those norms, well, it can have deadly consequences.
But the Shabnam and Saleem case, it wasn't just about punishment, societal norms.
No.
Right? It raised questions about India's legal system itself.
Yeah.
The trial, it was a media spectacle.
Yeah.
Dissected, debated by the public. It
Yeah.
brought up concerns about the fairness of the trial, the influence of public opinion, and the pressure on the judges and the jury.
Absolutely.
This case, it transcended the individuals involved. It became this symbol of India grappling with modernity.
Yeah.
Balancing tradition and progress.
Yeah.
Striving to ensure justice for everyone, no matter their gender, their social standing.
And as the years pass, the debate continues. Shabnam and Saleem, they remain on death row. Their appeals are exhausted. And their fate, it hangs in the balance. It's a constant reminder of the complexities of justice, the weight of societal expectations, and the truly tragic consequences of love gone terribly wrong. So, what can we, the listeners, take away from this?
Yeah. What have we learned?
I think for one thing, it's this powerful reminder that, that love, while it's a source of joy, connection, it can also be this powerful force for destruction. It shows us the vital need for open communication, the courage to challenge these harmful societal norms, and the crucial role of a just legal system that treats everybody fairly,
right.
equally.
It's a story that forces us to confront some unsettling truths about humanity, about the world we live in.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a story that lingers long after the verdict. It prompts reflection, debate, a renewed commitment to create a world where these tragedies are less likely to happen.
As we wrap up, I want to leave you with this. What can we do, as individuals, as a society, to create a world where love isn't something to be feared but celebrated, and where differences are embraced, not punished?
That's a powerful question, and one we hope this deep dive has encouraged you to think about. So thank you for joining us on this journey, into the heart of the Shabnam and Saleem case.
Yes, thank you.
If you found this, episode insightful, don't forget to follow and subscribe to CrimePod Castle, for more explorations into the complexities of true crime. And until next time, keep those minds curious and stay safe out there.